As the quarterback dust settles, it appears the Tennessee Titans might be stuck with Sam Darnold. That and more on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland, Titans fans. On today's episode, it is time for our first free agency preview of 2025. Time to look at the quarterbacks, and my Lord, the options are getting slim. I'm going to tell you who I think could start for the Tennessee Titans, who I think would be a good backup for the Tennessee Titans, and if the Titans draft a rookie quarterback, who I think the ideal veterans could be. Before we get into all of it, I do want to thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. And if you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one, especially these next few weeks. I'm doing a free agency preview all week this week. We're going over quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, the entire offensive line, every spot on defense. I'm going to have a bonus episode for you guys on Friday to go over more players on defense. I'll have a free agency preview on Sunday night, and then free agency, the tampering period, opens on Monday. We're going to have deals. We're going to have news. We're going to have rumors. So much stuff to go over. You don't want to miss any of the content that I'm putting out. You want to be the smartest, most informed Tennessee Titans fan you can be. So get subscribed. Stay subscribed to the Locked On Titans podcast. But with that being said, do want to mention that the Tennessee Titans have visits lined up with the top 4 prospects in the draft. The quarterbacks are both coming this week. Abdul Carter is coming this week, and Travis Hunter is coming just a couple of weeks after that due to a scheduling conflict. But the Titans are trying to get their situation in order so they can figure out what to do, and they need to, because they need to know how to operate in free agency. And they're going to need to get a quarterback in free agency no matter what level they are at. And let's look at this from multiple different ways. So number one, if the Tennessee Titans truly know we are not taking a quarterback at the top of the draft, whether that be a trade back, whether that be just taking a non-quarterback with the number 1 pick, if the Tennessee Titans do not take a quarter or do not intend to take a quarterback number 1 in the draft, then they need to attack free agency. And if they're looking for a starter in 2025, their options are very, very slim. So look, Kirk Cousins makes a ton of sense as a 1-year bridge option. It would be like Russell Wilson with the Pittsburgh Steelers last year. It would be a veteran minimum because he's getting paid from the Falcons. Same thing with Derek Carr. Derek Carr would be my top free agent option on the market for the Titans. But Derek Carr doesn't look like he's going to get released by the New Orleans Saints. And if Derek Carr's not getting released and Kirk Cousins hasn't been released, well, the Titans can't get quarterbacks that aren't available, and they certainly should not trade for either of those guys. So, if we don't have Derek Carr and we don't have Kirk Cousins, think maybe Aaron Rodgers. Well, Aaron Rodgers doesn't seem to be an option for the Titans. According to rumors coming out of the team, the Titans have no interest in Aaron Rodgers whatsoever. So, we could throw Aaron Rodgers out. So, if there's no Derek Carr, there's no Kirk Cousins, there's no Aaron Rodgers, then you look at Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson probably going to get $20 to $30 million for 1 season. But I continue to say Russell Wilson does not fit what the Tennessee Titans want to do. Russell Wilson has never been a quick timing accuracy quarterback. He's a guy who thrives off of play action. He wants to do the play fake, turn around, survey the defense. He's thrived off the deep ball and outside the numbers throughout his career. He does not throw over the middle of the field. He has no mobility. He holds onto the ball. He takes sacks. Like, Russell Wilson has had a good career, but the player that he is right now makes absolutely zero sense for what Brian Callahan prioritizes as a quarterback. Russell Wilson wants to play the way that Will Levis wants to play. I'm not comparing them as players. I'm saying the style of play they are best in is similar. Vertical throws down the field, off of play action, under center. And Brian Callahan runs a spread West Coast offense. He wants to mix in a ton of shotgun. He doesn't want to do too much play action. He wants to do quick timing routes on the outsides. It's just not what, and take advantage of zones over the middle. Like, it's just not what Brian Callahan wants to do. So Russell Wilson, especially for $20 to $30 million for 1 year, makes absolutely zero sense. So outside of those four guys, Carr and Cousins, who aren't available, Rodgers and Wilson, who don't make sense and haven't been connected to the Titans at all, like, other than them, who is there? Who is there? Well, in my mind, the only guy that could really be a starting quarterback for the Titans, where Brian Callahan will say, I can win games with this guy. The only guy left is Sam Darnold. That's it. You could say Justin Fields, but I'm sorry. Justin Fields is just the same problems that you have with Will Levis. And we'll talk about Justin Fields here in just a moment when I get to my next section. But if you're looking for a bona fide starter, we're signing this guy. He is our starting quarterback. The only options are Carr, Cousins, Rodgers, Wilson, and Darnold. It's those five names, and Carr and Cousins aren't there, and Carr and Cousins aren't available, and Rodgers and Wilson don't make any sense. Or I think Rodgers makes sense, but I'm going to trust what I've heard, that they are not interested in Aaron Rodgers. So I'm sorry. It sucks because I don't want Sam Darnold. I do not want Sam Darnold. I don't. I am the anti-Sam Darnold guy. I've been screaming in this microphone for a month. I don't want Sam Darnold. But if the Titans aren't going to take a quarterback number one in the draft, if they aren't picking Cam Ward at the top, then what other route are they going to take to get a starting quarterback? It's obvious. The only choice that they have is Sam Darnold. They are stuck with Sam Darnold. That's their only option. So to me right now, when I look at the quarterbacks, to me there are only two choices the Titans have. Draft Cam Ward, number one overall, or pay Sam Darnold. Now, the question becomes then, what are you going to pay Sam Darnold? Well, a lot of people said that he's probably going to get $40 million a year. I've said he's probably going to get $50 million a year. But I do have some good news. Coming out of the combine, most people around the league, including I saw Teron Davenport mention this for the Titans, shout out TD, that the Titans aren't willing to meet the $40 million a year price range. I think Teron, and sorry if I'm misquoting here, but I thought Teron mentioned about $30 million a year. If the Titans could do a 2-year deal for $60 million, $30 million a year with Sam Darnold, I could sleep at night. I could at least accept that. I'm not giving Sam Darnold 3 to 4 years, $50 million a year. That's what I'm scared of. And it sounds like other teams around the NFL are scared of that too. Nobody is overly fooled by the Sam Darnold Vikings experience, as they shouldn't be. So, do I want Sam Darnold? No. Would I take Sam Darnold at 2 years, $30 million with only like 1 year guaranteed or only the two? I would accept that. But the reality of the situation, regardless of what I want and what I think, look at the options we just talked about. It's Cam Ward or it's Sam Darnold. And there aren't really any viable starting options available outside of those two. So with that being said, though, what are the other options that the Titans would have? And you're not going to like it, but that could come in and compete with Will Levis. We'll go over that. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off and you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you could stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine live bets into a same game parlay. And I said live bets because even when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature. It makes every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. And I've just been betting on the Lakers to win lately, baby, and it just never stops hitting. Now that I say that, I'll jinx them and they'll lose. It's incredible superpower I have. But either way, right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. It is a free agency preview, our first one, looking at quarterback, and I gave an entire episode to the quarterback position because of how important it is to the Titans. So first, we looked at guys who could be bona fide starters for the Tennessee Titans. No questions, they're the starter this year. The only guy that makes sense at this point, sadly, I say sadly because it's not an option that I like, but I also have to acknowledge reality. And Sam Darnold is really the only option available for the Titans if they want a bona fide starter. Now, the other path that the Tennessee Titans could reasonably go here, if they don't draft a quarterback #1 overall, you draft a quarterback in the first round of the draft, they need to start. They'll be the starter. But if the Titans don't go with one of the top options that I mentioned, Carr, Cousins, Darnold, Rodgers, Russell Wilson. And remember, Carr and Cousins aren't available, but if they were, they would be incredible options for vet minimums. But if the Titans want to get a guy and say, you're going to compete with Will Levis for the starting quarterback job. Now, I think this is a death sentence for Brian Callahan. He is cooked if this is the route they go. Brian Callahan will be fired if this is the route they go. But if they do go this route to compete with Will Levis, there are a lot of quarterbacks that do make sense. #1 is Justin Fields. I have continued to say this makes no sense to me. We heard the rumor that the Titans are like the third team for Fields. The Steelers and the Jets are battling it out. And then the Titans are like the third team. Justin Fields as a compete with Will Levis doesn't make any sense. Justin Fields and Will Levis have the same problems. If Brian Callahan was upset with Will Levis holding the ball, being a slow processor, being inaccurate, and being a turnover problem, then why would you go get Justin Fields, who is a slow processor, who's inaccurate, who has turnover problems, who holds the ball? I mean, Justin Fields is probably a better player than Will Levis because of the mobility. Fields has a good arm, like arm strength, velocity. He can throw the ball down the field, no problem. But he has way more mobility. So you could say, hey, Justin Fields is better than Will Levis. You're right. So let him come in and compete. But again, the fit in the system for Brian Callahan to be as unsatisfied as he was with what Will Levis brought to the table last year, and then to go out and seek that in free agency, again, doesn't make any sense. So I'm not buying it. So if it's not Justin Fields, who are some other guys that could come in and compete with Will Levis? Well, Mac Jones. Mac Jones would make a ton of sense. He'd be $5 to $6, maybe $7 million for one season. Maybe you get him 2 years, $5 million with only 1 year guaranteed, something like that. That could make a ton of sense. Mac Jones is a former first-round pick. I think Mac Jones is a very similar talent level to Will Levis. He may not have the arm strength and the mobility that Levis does, but I think his ability to hang in the pocket, his ability to throw with accuracy, I think that balances the scales with Will Levis's more physical gifts. Mac Jones is a better player between the ears than Will Levis. And I think he fits what Brian Callahan would want to do in the quick timing, get the ball out of your hands, operate the offense. I think that Mac Jones makes a ton of sense for the Titans. I really do. Jameis Winston. Now, again, Winston gives you a lot of Levis. I mean, he gives you a lot of Levis. He's going to throw the ball downfield. Might be some high leverage plays that are made. And then there are going to be some mind-numbing, stupid turnovers. Look at that Denver Broncos game on Monday Night Football if you need any other evidence. Jameis Winston made some incredible throws in that game. And he also made some incredibly stupid throws that killed his team in that game. So Winston could be a guy who come in, compete with Will Levis. Jacoby Brissett, another guy who I don't think that Jacoby Brissett deserves to be in the certified starter range that we talked about in the first segment. But Jacoby Brissett, come in, compete with Will Levis. I think that makes a ton of sense. With the idea that Jacoby Brissett might actually win. That would be so boring and so terrible for a season. Like, I would take Jameis Winston. I think Jacoby Brissett probably better, but I would take Jameis Winston over Jacoby Brissett any day of the week just for, I got to watch this team and not have my eyes bleed out. Like, anyways, outside of that, some younger guys, Winston and Brissett are older guys. Mac Jones is younger. Fields is kind of in between. But some younger guys that the Titans could bring in and say, you know, you're competing. Daniel Jones. But I think Daniel Jones stays in Minnesota with J.J. McCarthy. I think that would make a ton of sense for him. Desmond Ridder. Titans took Malik Willis instead of Desmond Ridder a couple of years ago in the draft. Maybe they bring in Ridder. Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, former, let me, and keep those names in your mind when you think about taking a quarterback early in the draft. Yeah, I would love if it was Jaden Daniels, but it could be Trey Lance and Zach Wilson too. Like, stuff like that happens. Don't forget that, quarterback folks. But anyway, I think another reality that we could see is if the Titans were to get a Sam Darnold, a Kirk Cousins, a Derek Carr, if they become available, pairing, if you get rid of Will Levis just because you want to get rid of Will Levis, and you pair Carr or Cousins or Darnold, or I guess Russell Wilson, throw him in there, Aaron Rodgers. If you get any of those guys, you could reasonably pair them with Mac Jones, Desmond Ridder, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance as like a young backup that you can develop, behind the veteran quarterback. That could be an option. You could have a pairing of that sort together. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, Carr, Cousins, Darnold, Rodgers, Wilson, those five guys are the only viable starting quarterback options for the Titans. Carr and Cousins aren't even available. Rodgers and Wilson don't really fit what Brian Callahan wants. So again, that leaves Sam Darnold. And if they go with the compete with Will Levis route, it's got to be like Mac Jones or Desmond Ridder. Those are the only things. You can't go, or Justin Fields. Like, you can't go too old with that, I don't think. Now, if the Titans were to draft a quarterback, if they draft Cam Ward number 1 overall, if they trade back and they land Shedeur Sanders, something like that, if they go draft for their starting quarterback in the first round, well, that totally changes the calculation of what kind of backup you want to get. And again, I feel like what the Titans do at quarterback in free agency will tell us a lot about what the Titans plan to do at quarterback in the draft. So let's talk about that. Titans fans, let's cap off today's first episode of our 2025 free agent preview. We're talking quarterbacks. I went over the certified starters. I went over the compete with Will Levis group. Now we need to go with back up a first-round rookie quarterback group, because that's obviously a group we need to pay attention to. But before we do, thanks again for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day, Monday through Friday. Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL. I host Locked On NFL as well, so you get your Titans news here with me, get your NFL news with me in under 30 minutes every day for free at Locked On NFL. But again, certified starters, compete with Will Levis, back up a first-round rookie quarterback. So here's what I'm going with this group. What you want in this group is someone who's good in the locker room, someone who will mentor a young quarterback, someone who will support a young quarterback, someone who can teach them how to watch film at the NFL level, how to prepare at the NFL level, what practice routine, how to take care of your body, all of the side quests of being an NFL football player. Think about, you do a career mode and you got your games, but you got to do your study. You got to do your physical therapy. You got to do your community work, all that different stuff that goes along with the side quests of being a professional athlete, and particularly a quarterback in the NFL, which is a totally different level of expectations. But what I want is a player who could help teach all those things to a young quarterback. That's what I'm looking for here. They're not somebody who is gung-ho about being a starter. They're not somebody like a Jameis Winston, Jacoby Brissett, Daniel Jones, Mac Jones, Desmond Ridder, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Trey Lance. Those guys, well, with the exception of one, those guys are like, I could still be a starter. I want a chance to be a starter. The guys I'm about to mention do not care about being a starter anymore. All right. Taylor Heineke, consummate professional, understands the league, has started games, has been a backup, totally fine with being a backup. I think he makes a ton of sense. Ton of sense. Taylor Heineke. Love that fit for the Titans. Marcus Mariota. Now, let me say this. Marcus ain't coming back to Tennessee. It's not happening. And I don't think his skill set would make sense with Brian Callahan's offense either. So I don't see the Marcus Mariota. Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco makes a ton of sense. Like, Joe Flacco makes a ton of sense. A ton of sense, in my opinion. I will say this. If the Titans draft Cam Ward, then maybe Marcus Mariota does make sense. You know what I mean? And maybe new regimes. It's been a long time. Maybe he would come back. I just don't think so. But Joe Flacco, especially if you get Shedeur Sanders, makes sense. Jimmy Garoppolo has been to a Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo was the backup in LA last year. I think that would make a ton of sense. His skill set fits what Brian Callahan would be looking to do. He doesn't have a super strong arm, but he can definitely operate underneath. Maybe that would make sense with a Shedeur Sanders pairing. Teddy Bridgewater. Now, Teddy Bridgewater was retired for most of the season last year. He'll probably go back to being retired. But hey, if he wants to make some money, come be my backup, Teddy. I would love Teddy Bridgewater as a backup. That would be such a, and especially, look, I hate to make this thing weird, but at the end of the day, you relate to people based on mutual experiences, things you've experienced. And having a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, I think, makes a lot more sense as a pairing with a guy like Cam Ward than Joe Flacco or Jimmy Garoppolo. You know what I mean? Like, it just somebody who can bond with, somebody who can trust, somebody who can see life through his lens. That stuff matters with what I'm talking about for this particular role. So I think that a Teddy Bridgewater would make a ton of sense with a Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders for that matter. So Case Keenum is another guy, tons of experience. He's won a playoff game. Like, he's been at every level of the NFL. He was a nobody. Then he became a starter. He had a playoff win. He had big moments. Went back to being a backup. Has been a backup. Like, Case Keenum is pretty much a coach at this point. He will be a coach eventually in our lives. I think Case Keenum could make a ton of sense as well. Now, I will say Jacoby Brissett is a guy who I said could be a compete with Levis option, but I see Jacoby Brissett as an option in this group too. Jacoby Brissett would be backup Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders material too. He's right on that borderline. So not everybody fits just in one group. Like I said, Mac Jones and Desmond Ridder and Zach Wilson and Trey Lance, they could be a backup to Carr, Cousins, Darnold, Wilson, Rodgers. You know what I mean? That would make sense. But they make more sense as a compete with Levis. Jacoby Brissett's kind of on that line of, hey, you could come in and we could say, hey, you're competing with Will Levis for the starting job, or you could bring in Jacoby Brissett and Cam Ward. If you want Cam Ward, if you want a rookie quarterback, I think Jacoby Brissett is a backup and Cam Ward is your presumed starter. I think that is the ideal outcome for the Titans if they do draft Cam Ward number 1 overall. I think that's a great quarterback room for the Titans. So that's my options. If you want a certified starter, hope that Carr or Cousins gets released. Sam Darnold, probably the only logical choice. Wilson and Rodgers. Then you could look at Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Jacoby Brissett, Jameis Winston as compete with Levis guys. And then Heineke and Garoppolo and Bridgewater and Flacco and Marcus could be, those backup to a rookie type guys. So out of all of those different categories, let me know which ones you prefer, what options you like there. But that's my free agency preview for the quarterback position. Tomorrow, barring huge breaking news for the Titans, I'm going to be looking at running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, the skill positions. I don't think the Titans are going to make a ton of waves. In previous years, I've gone position by position. Each day I've done a full day for wide receiver and a full day for... I just don't think that's necessary with a lot of these positions because, quite frankly, there aren't any good players at a lot of these positions. Like wide receiver, it's Chris Godwin, and then who? And the Titans don't need to go out and pay Chris Godwin, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm just going to go one position at a time throughout the show because I don't really see the Titans making a big signing. I don't think the Titans sign anybody at running back or tight end. And wide receiver, they might do a little depth signing or anything like that. But, we'll go over those options so you guys can see what the Titans are actually working with. But that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.